Just what happens when technology makes mistakes. I'm Mike Loader in the Tech Edge. It starts right now. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Edge, of course, presented by the team at AvePoint, where each episode we delve into the latest industry trends for business IT and their significance in today's landscape. Today we explore the significance of ethical AI and the essential safeguards for data integrity. Joining me now is AvePoint Director of Information Management, Alyssa Blackburn, who happens to be my co-host. Alyssa, it's an important topic.
It is an important topic, Mike. Good decisions are made based on good information.
Yeah.
And especially so now that we're starting to talk about really exciting topics like generative AI, but we really need to consider the ethical considerations of using this. And I know our next guest is going to have some amazing things to say about that.
Well, let's not mess about. Let's bring in Tori Miller Liu, President and CEO of the Association for Intelligent Information Management. It's wonderful to have you on the program. Let's start with what the consequences of AI errors in organizations can be based on what you've seen.
Can I start off being instantly argumentative and say that I don't really think there's such a thing as AI errors. I think the unsupervised and supervised algorithms that you find in most generative AI engines and applications are doing what they've been coded to do and programmed to do. They have been coded and taught to deliver the most statistically best sounding answer. So right off the bat, I'll say there's no such thing as errors. I don't really think there's such a thing as hallucinations. But I do think that you are likely to get output that, even though it might statistically sound good, is not accurate. And that's probably the biggest thing, I think, with AI, really gauging whether or not the output is accurate as opposed to trustworthy. And that's where I think the responsibility lies for those perceived AI errors. It's up to humans to really assess whether or not you're going to take an AI output verbatim, or if you're going to do additional research, find out where the source is from, and do your due diligence.
Absolutely, Tori. This is a really important thing for organisations to consider. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations for frameworks that organisations can implement to safeguard some of this data integrity?
I think we're very fortunate that the EU Parliament and the US, which is a little bit behind the EU, have started developing things like the AI Bill of Rights that start to at least provide some semblance of guidance. What I don't see is a ton of direct tactical advice on how you actually operationalize some of that guidance. So what I have been doing is I've been looking at things like AIIM International's data management body of knowledge and trying to translate some of the principles of data governance and information governance to the world of AI governance. Because a lot of the root fundamentals are the same. AI is built on data. Despite the beauty of the algorithms, they wouldn't be as valuable if they didn't have really robust, voluminous data sets. So there are principles like data transparency, data interoperability, data continuity, and accuracy that are still really relevant when you're thinking about how do I mitigate AI errors and how do I govern AI in general?
Yeah, it's curious stuff. So how do AI errors impact data integrity? I know there's a lot of businesses out there who they live by their data. They live and die by their data, I think. But take us through a little bit about how these errors can impact the integrity of something so precious.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth clarifying. You read a lot about the data around AI, and people talk about data hygiene, they talk about data quality, they talk about data integrity. From my perspective, data integrity really talks about the life cycle that data and information has traversed. So you're really interested in the accuracy and the completeness and the consistency of that data over its entire life cycle, from the point of creation to the point of transformation within the AI algorithm to the point of output. And you want to know, how did that data traverse that information life cycle? Was it transformed? Did the AI algorithm, when it produced that perceived error, transform it somehow so it's different? And that it's less important when you're, me at night just asking ChatGPT, like, I need a casserole recipe. It's a lot more important when you're at an enterprise and you're feeding that AI engine invoices or customer contracts, you want to make sure that the AI algorithm hasn't transformed the data in some way. And it's your responsibility as the enterprise and the user to mitigate your liability and risk and track the source and understand that life cycle and what's happened to that information throughout the data integrity life cycle.
So first of all, I'm extremely disappointed you didn't come to me for a casserole recipe, but
I know,
we can put that aside for the moment. You know that one of the things I like to stand on my soapbox a lot about is the integrity of our information and data that we hold in an organization, but also that life cycle piece that you've talked about. And I know that that's something, you know, we certainly share views on there. But how can an organization maintain trust and accuracy and accountability as well when they are starting to use these cool new generative AI tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of organizations and executives that I've talked to are starting with the right thing. It's about educating yourself and your employees about AI capabilities, AI risks, so that you can come up with an educational strategy, you can come up with a risk mitigation strategy. I think it's also about proactively identifying and mitigating and preventing the uncontrolled use of sensitive content. So one of the things I've also heard is the need for enterprises to really understand what of our data is actually permissible to be used by these AI algorithms. You may not want to feed it all of your enterprise data. You might have sensitive litigation information that you don't want fed into it that's accessible to all your employees or all your consultants. So that's probably first. I think you start with security, you start with a sense of privacy. And when you look at like ethical frameworks around technology and AI, it always includes something around security. It always includes something about transparency. It always includes something about education and being aware of emerging trends. And I think the biggest thing with these ethical frameworks around AI that I've seen is absolutely transparency. And you see, at least in the US, when the government was talking about copyright laws and they were seeking public comment about copyright, they're hinting at the need to identify a source, not just to protect the intellectual property and the copyright, but also to protect the consumer. I don't want to unknowingly use an artist's work, especially if I'm at an enterprise level. That poses a risk to my enterprise because you just allowed me through your AI application to use someone's painting from 2013. So those are kind of the important things that we need to track. Yeah. Who created it? Who owns it? What's the source? Was it reliable? Is it intellectual property, et cetera?
Yeah, there's an informed consent argument here, I think, as well, both from a consumer perspective, but also, you know, even internally for an organization, when we are making decisions based on this, we need to be making them with a level of informed consent that we know where this information or, you know, the generated data is actually coming from. And I think that's something that organizations really need to consider.
I think what makes me a little anxious, though, is I don't think there's been quite enough research on what collecting and storing that data and that source information is going to mean, especially for the environment. And, you know, I've read a little bit about the need for more modern and just simply more data centers. And I think it's important to kind of understand what are those data centers going to do to our electrical grid? What is that going to do to climate change? What impact is that going to have? Because now you're talking about not just combing the web to feed a large language model. You're talking about, I need to identify every single source, every single copyright. And that's a lot of data. That's a lot of data to store.
That is, and of course I forget about the storage, but I'm glad you mentioned the artistic element of this because a lot of artists I know, you know, of course, were very concerned about the, you know, Mid-Journey and things like that were recreating art. But let's talk a little bit about how ethical frameworks can actually help prevent these data integrity issues, some of which we've outlined. What does that framework, I guess, look like? There's no silver bullet to this, is there?
No, there's not. But the ethical frameworks that are available always promote transparency. And I think you start with that. You start being transparent about when AI is in use, when you've used it to create something, especially that you're delivering to consumers, to customers. I think You definitely want to look at privacy and confidentiality and how is the data used? Am I protecting sensitive data, not just sensitive data to my enterprise, but sensitive data for individuals? Did I use personal health information? Did I use PPI? Those are the kinds of questions that we need to be able to answer in good faith. And then I think that's probably the third biggest thing. You act in good faith. This technology is still pretty black box. There's not a ton of experts in the world that can audit generative AI applications. So I think it's important that we come at generative AI with some level of humility and understand that we don't fully understand how this technology is working yet. We don't understand the repercussions on society, on the environment, and we need to be responsible and careful as we approach it. I by no means am one of those folks that's about going to say pause AI development. I think that's unrealistic and also foolish, but I do think you need to proceed with caution.
So Tori, just to throw a random question at you, if organizations can only do one thing, what's the most important thing that they should be focusing on?
Oh, are we talking about the AI developers or the consumers of AI?
Consumers for AI, particularly businesses who are starting to embrace this kind of technology.
Well, I'm incredibly biased, but I think you should invest in your information management program or your data management program. I think you should focus on the fundamentals of your data because that is the key to AI readiness and AI success. You should be thinking about content access. You should be thinking about content hygiene and making sure that the data that you're feeding these AI engines is accurate and good for your organization, and you're willing to feed it to the engine, and you understand the repercussions of feeding it to that engine.
Tori, before we let you go, I'm curious to know where these leaders should start when it comes to all of this. What would you say is the starting point for our audience at home and business leaders out there who are looking to step into this, manage this, stay on top of it?
I think the start is educating yourself about the solutions in the space, but also educating yourself about things like the ethical frameworks that we're talking about. There's so many different flavors of those frameworks. There's so many different pieces of advice and really expert pieces of content, including on AIIM.org, that I think you should consult. I think it starts with education. And then I think you need to start quickly moving to experimentation. I do feel like some leaders and enterprises are getting stuck in a bit of analysis paralysis.
Tori, there's some good advice there. There's some good advice, but it's all the time I've got for you. I'm so sorry. It was a big question to ask at the end, but thank you so much for joining us here on the Tech Edge and helping us out today.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.
Well, there you have it. That was interesting stuff. And of course, this is only going to continue to be a discussion. So I appreciate you jumping up with us and helping us disseminate what is going on.
It's a big, big thing that businesses just have to get across.
Absolutely. That's the program for now. Look forward to seeing you all again very soon when we return right here on Ticker. Be well.
You're watching Ticker. We'll have more in just a few minutes.